Hello, and welcome to The Issue on the ASGCT Podcast Network. I'm your host, Emily Walsh Martin, and today I'm incredibly lucky to be joined by Niki Paulk, CEO and founder, and dare I say, firebrand and chief of Siren Biotechnology. As a forewarning for today's podcast, I'm going to have to encourage you guys to lock in, bro. With Niki's insights, we're going to reveal all the secrets of the universe as it pertains to entrepreneurship, fundraising, and positioning cell and gene therapy to truly capitalize on the promise of the future. So whether you're from industry or academia, today's timely conversation will cover everything you need to know from seed to series to community rounds and beyond with the always perceptive and discerning Dr. Niki Paulk. But first, somehow it's already January, and that means that the ASGCT 2026 annual meeting abstract submission is in full swing. So submit your amazing research by January 30th, and then meet us in Boston, May 11th through 15th for the premier event in our field. And just a reminder that if you renew your membership with ASGCT and register now, you'll save up to $550 on your registration. Check out the full program, plan your trip, submit your abstract, and register for the annual meeting at annualmeeting.asgct.org. And now, on with this episode. Welcome to The Issue on the ASGCT Podcast Network. Nicole Paulk, CEO, founder, president of Siren Biotechnology, as well as assistant professor at my PhD alma mater, the University of California, San Francisco. Not to mention the fact that you're also on pretty much every scientific advisory board there is, Metagenome, Astellas, Dino, GRO, Cytiva, Excision, White Lab, Sarepta. I'm going to run out of breath. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
And even more that are stealth that you don't even know about.
Exactly. Stealth 1, Stealth 2, Stealth 3. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Happy to.
Yeah. So when you and I first chatted about this conversation a few weeks back, we're like, we want to do it all. We want to cover the fullness of everything that's on the gene and cell therapy landscape and the reasons to continue to believe in the opportunities in front of us as an industry. But before we dive into that, I think it would be great to take our audience through your particular career path. I think they'll be very interested in hearing something about that.
Yeah. So folks may or may not know, depending on how well they stalk me online, because I'm perpetually online. The gene therapy space wasn't something I was like, I'm 6 years old. Oh my gosh, mommy, I want to be a gene therapist. Like not in the slightest. I didn't even think I was going to be a scientist necessarily. The plan was always just like sports on top of more sports. Can we fit more sports into my schedule? And in so doing, ruined my shoulders, dislocated them both 4 times, and then was like, okay, now what? So realized I should probably start paying attention. Not that I wasn't already paying attention in school, but that's when I really had to start paying attention and in undergrad. And like many folks, this kind of parallels the experience we're having now with the NIH with all the grant craziness. This was at a time where I was at a very small ag school, and there were entirely 2 professors. This was at Central Washington University, go Wildcats. There were precisely 2 professors on the entire campus, not just in the school, not just in like the scientific schools. There were 2 professors on the entire campus that had grants that could actually pay you money to do research with them as opposed to just giving you credit. And one of those happened to be in an atmospheric nanochemistry lab. Has nothing to do with gene therapy, but it was a science lab, and it was an opportunity for me to like get my hands dirty and, do everything from like doing acid washing of glassware all the way up through like entire experiments on my own, going to present at my first scientific conference. I went to the American Chemical Society meeting in Hawaii, which was amazing, and kind of got to learn like from 0 to 1 how to think about an experiment and like set up a hypothesis and design all the experiments and run the experiments and publish a paper and go present it at a conference, like the true 0 to 1 on like owning a project, and at that same time was actually getting my degree over one building over, right over in medical microbiology and virology, and was just like very interested in like the concept of viruses. They just kind of blew my mind how wild these tiny little things were. The like sci-fi geek in me was, interested in all of the ways that viruses creep into our culture. I've given whole talks now at like South by Southwest on like the way viruses have like kind of seeped into our culture and the way we always consider them to be a negative thing. And I was like, but they're so cool. They're not always a bad thing. We always represent them as bad, but they can be very cool and very awesome and very good, right? Folks can't see us because we're not on video, but like I'm licking my arm right now. Like they're all over you. They're crawling all over you. They do good things. They're not just things that make you sick. I was one of the weird people that liked the concept of studying viruses that don't make you sick. Like if you go ask like anyone walking around on the street, name a virus. I promise you, I would like bet everything on black in Vegas. They will not name a non-pathogenic virus. They only know if they can even remember what the difference is between a virus and a bacteria. Like if they can name you a virus at all, it is going to be a virus that makes people sick.
Right.
Maybe if they're a farmer, they could name one that makes animals or plants sick, but it will be something that makes something that we care about sick. It is not any of the 99.99999% of viruses on Earth that don't make humans, plants we either grow for food or keep as pets, or plants sick. And I was very interested in those before I really knew that gene therapy was a thing. I was just interested in other viruses that exist. And then decided I was definitely going to go and be a doctor, and I was going to be like infectious disease, 100%. And then there was a group at the University of Washington. I didn't attend UW, I went to CWU, but there was a group in Seattle at the University of Washington that went to Africa every other summer and did like pro bono medical. And so I was like, I'm gonna go with them. So I like begged my way in, even though I wasn't a UW student, begged my way in and said I was like a longtime Husky fan, and just said, please, 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 please take me. And they finally relented. So I spent the entire summer, I think this was like my junior year or something. I spent my entire summer in Africa, in Kenya and Tanzania, treating patients, and came back from the experience realizing, oh my God, I don't want to go to med school. Sick people make me very sad. I am not one of those people who can detach from the people around me. And be like, oh, you're sick, but I will not absorb any of your feelings. I will just treat you like a robot. Not that physicians do this, but that's like, the way that they teach you to like kind of detach a little bit so that you don't personally absorb everyone's pain and all of those things. There were absolutely like little kids in Africa that like we could not treat. We didn't have the medicine for. They were going to die. It's just like, I can't do this. Oh my God. I kind of came back from that summer with all of these like pre-med credits, but realizing like, man, I should not go to med school. Oh my God. Existential life crisis number one. I say number one because there have been and there will be many. So first existential life crisis, like now what? And my chemistry professor was like, well, you're quite good at the bench, Have you thought about going and getting a PhD? The credits are almost exactly the same, pre-med and kind of pre-PhD. And I was like, no. I hadn't taken the GRE or anything. So I knew I was gonna graduate, but like kind of be behind.
Yeah.
So I went to Portland with my then boyfriend who got into dental school. And I was like, well, I'll just be like a research technician for a year and make some money to pay off some of my student loans. And I'll take the GRE and all these things and I'll apply. And in that year, in Portland, I applied to a job ad on Craigslist. That's how old I am.
Wow. Okay.
A Craigslist ad. I applied for a Craigslist ad for a research lab position, not knowing the name of the lab, unbeknownst to me, Marcus Grompe, arguably one of the most famous stem cell scientists on the planet. I did not know this. This was just like some dude who posted an ad on Craigslist, and I applied because it was going to be paid for money. Like fast forward, finding out homeboy was super famous and being like, hey, you should go to grad school and you should join my lab. And me being like, okay, but can I work on viruses? And he's like, no, we work on stem cells. And I'm like, yeah, but can I work on viruses? And him being like, you're not listening to me. Like, viruses are popular. Gene therapy is not popular. This was like still back when we were kind of in the phase where it like wasn't super popular. The freeze had been lifted from like the FDA and the NIH following the whole Jesse Gelsinger thing, but it still like wasn't popular yet. And so he was just like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? Why would you want to work on gene therapy? I can't give you grant money for this. Like, no one's gonna publish this. It's not interesting. No one's in that space. You'd never get a faculty job. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
I'm still just like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed little, bunny eyes being like, but can I has viruses? And he's just like, oh my God. He's like, look, I can't give you, if you can find some money, if you can find some, I'll let you play with
Uh,
this. And so like, then I had my marching orders, and that was probably fast forward, like the first moment I should have realized, like, I'm going to end up being a CEO one day. Cause I was just like, don't worry, I'll find the money. And like, here I am, a grad student who's like, supposed to be in class studying, learning like how to be a scientist,
right.
how to be this distinguished member of academia. And I'm just out hustling, trying to get money, applying for like scholarships and fellowships and little grants. And everyone's like, no, 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 your PI applies for grants. You do research. And I'm like, no, no, but I'm applying.
Right.
And fast forward, I ended up, and I think to this day I might still hold the record for like most grant money, scholarship, and fellowship money ever awarded to a graduate student. Um,
Wow.
at OHSU. And so finally, Marcus was just like, play with viruses in the corner with your cute little pile of money that you found. Go ahead, just do it. And that was, there wasn't a lot of folks really in the space then. And so there was a lot of like really fundamental stuff that needed to get published. And a lot of
Yeah.
folks weren't working on it. So I don't want to say it's easy. Every PhD is hard, but it was like relatively easy to kind of like
Right.
just you publish one paper and then there's like an obvious follow-up. So then like you do that paper and then there's an obvious
Right.
follow-up to that. So we just like kept at it. And like before you knew it, it's like all of a sudden I had 6 papers and it was like year 3. And even though Marcus was the director of the Stem Cell Center at OHSU, game respects game. Like 6 papers is still 6 papers. So all of a sudden
Right.
it's kind of like, okay,
Maybe there is something here.
like
Maybe these
okay,
viruses are
I'm
interesting.
here. And that was kind of right at the moment where some of the OG companies, like Spark and stuff, were starting to
Right.
present some data. And like at ASGCT at the annual meeting, right, it went from being like 200 of us sitting around in jeans in Seattle, like hanging out and, like having a beer and a slice of pizza and just like kind of chatting about all of our unpublished data to like now there was maybe 300 people at the meeting or 400
Yeah.
people at the meeting. And like maybe you'd like button up your top button or something. Um, Not super formal,
There's still no tie. There's
no
no,
ties, like absolutely no ties, no suits, none of that. But like
sometimes
you'd wear like
it's cold, so you'd have a jacket.
you're like not dirty tennis shoes. Like you're
Yeah.
nice tennis shoes. Very West Coast. And so then it's like I finished and it was like, okay, now it's time to go do a postdoc. And I would say about 2 to 3 years into my postdoc at Stanford was right when like gene therapy hit. It's when like your mom started asking you like, so what's gene therapy? I heard about it on the 5 o'clock news. It was like the moment
Right.
it like reached everyone. Like everyone had heard about it. It had been on the 5 o'clock news. It finally like permeated through to everyday normal folks. And that was kind of like right in like the middle to end of my postdoc. And so you had this weird moment where, right kind of in like 2016-ish, it was like
Yeah.
it broke through. And that was when the annual meeting just started to go nuts and like double
Yeah.
every year. And all of a sudden it was like there were people at the meeting you had never met before and you didn't know. And people were in
Yep.
suits all of a sudden. And there was like people that were very clearly from like New York there. And you're like, who are you? Are you a
Yeah.
anchor? And that just like that was just when things got crazy
Yep.
and you could publish like crazy and the grants were there and the momentum was there and all of the companies out in industry were really starting to put out like late stage data that looked really promising. And that's when people were showing videos in the presidential symposium of like cute
Yes.
kids and everyone's crying and it was just like, okay, this is like yes. Yes, yes, yes. And that kind of was right at the moment I was finishing and getting ready to kind of start my lab at UCSF. And then there was like a couple years where it was just like, okay. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And right, UCSF was a public institution, unlike Stanford, which was private, where I did my postdoc. And like Stanford was able to go back to work and be considered an essential worker within like a month. But
Sure.
UCSF, it was like month 9 or something that I
Oh,
was
wow.
still, sitting at my house, like reanalyzing old data, writing reviews, like doing what you could to just like kind of keep the lights on kind of a thing and just realizing like, I'm gonna crawl out of my skin.
Yeah.
And so that was when the idea kind of got floated, not even by me, actually, by our clinical colleagues at UCSF. We're like, have you thought about spinning out the project that fast forward ended up becoming Siren, but have you thought about spinning that out into a company? Because the data that you've got is pretty remarkable. We weren't
Yeah.
planning like making an AAV, the world's first AAV for oncology in humans. It was just we were playing around with like universal payloads, like what are payloads that we could deliver that will allow us to make a gene therapy that could be used to treat more than one thing, so that we could
Exactly.
like go after more things faster, cheaper, easier, and try to go after that untouchable trifecta, right? The cheaper, easier, faster. Where pick two, you only get two out of three. And I was like, no, we're going for all
Exactly.
three. We're going for all three. Um, and yeah, so that's when we spun out Siren at like the peak of COVID, when you were lysoling off like your Doritos that you got on Instacart. Before
Yep.
you opened the bag, that was us in September of 21. And kind of the rest is history. We went out and fundraised. That was like at the peak when you could just like whisper onto a piece of paper and you could get funding here in Silicon Valley.
Right.
It was definitely at the peak. We are now in a valley, but that was at a peak. So managed to get a beautiful seed from Founders Fund, and a number of other groups, but Founders Fund led that round. And then the rest is history. Now we've done a seed, a safe, a Series A, a community round. We're about to be in the clinic here in early 26, and the rest is history.
Exactly. And that's again what we want to I think focus on today is that sort of fundraising journey that you've been on, because I think what's really intriguing to me is you've done some very traditional, I'd say, fundraising, but also some interesting non-traditional fundraising, and I think that the story behind that and sort of what were the elements that came together that made that all possible is super interesting. And so, but we sort of can't do that kind of discussion without the sort of second half to any fundraising story, which is the general media climate. And so what I think we want to do is sort of maybe, talk about your fundraising journey at Siren, and then sort of talk about, okay, well, what would that, like if you had to start Siren today, what would be the obstacles in the way of having that same success?
Absolutely. So kind of like what has been our path, and like what have we done that's traditional and what's unique, and kind of advice I would give. So all the on the traditional side, like you couldn't have been more traditional for being a Silicon Valley startup, whether you're tech, biotech, doesn't matter. Like in Silicon Valley, like you go raise from Sand Hill and all of the normal kind of big names here in San Francisco. And so when we spun out, right, I got Founders Fund and Lux Capital to run our seed in a price round. Like you don't get more awesome and marquee and traditional than that. And then we were super fortunate a year, and this is all while we were still stealth, right? So we hadn't come out yet. I hadn't told anybody about Siren yet, which is why I think it was such a big surprise when I did tell everyone about it
Right.
2 years after we had actually started in secret. Right. So we're stealth. We get the seed. I get like the first hires, get some space, get all the things. Bayer Pharma allowed us into their incubator program, the Bayer Collaborator Space.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
we submitted a state grant, which highly recommend everyone still apply for grants, even if the federal grants are being crazy. There's state grants, city, county,
Sure.
vendor, like you name it. Like you got to be creative and go out and find stuff. And so there are, because we are fortunate and in the state of California, this is a program called CIRM that has a very large grants that are on offer, like multi-millions of dollars, like not a cute $50,000 grant where it's like, this is
Right.
awesome, but this isn't really going to move the needle for me the way that like, a $4 million grant was, which was the first grant that we got from CIRM. So we had applied for that grant. It was a translational grant to basically do all the prep work to get ready for your IND enabling large animal GLP tox studies. And it was specifically for like cell and gene therapies in the state of California for like rare unmet medical needs. And so we like ticked all the boxes and we won that grant. But one of the requirements of that grant is they required new co-funding, and you had 30 days to go out and get it. So we had to hustle.
Oh,
So we
wow.
opened a safe. If folks don't know what that is, just Google it. But it's basically like a non-priced round, like kind of like an IOU. It's like you give me money now, and I promise when we raise our next round, we'll just like incorporate you into that round.
Okay.
And so we did a safe for 30 days, brought in about just under $2.5 million on that, which was like hustling from friends. There are probably people listening to this podcast who got an email from me being like, "Hey, do you want to invest in Siren Safe?" Because we were
So
out
that was
grabbing.
like an angel round.
It's
Like
literally it's an
it.
angel round,
Okay.
but with a special financial instrument.
Okay. All right.
So basically went out and talked to like all of our friends in the cell and gene therapy space and said like, hey, in order to win this grant money, we have to like raise money. It's kind of weird. Do you want to invest in Siren? So we did this safe. We had 30 days, got that in, that unlocked the grant, got the grant. And then we basically kind of worked in stealth for about another year. And then that's when we announced at ASGCT at the annual meeting that what Siren was and what we were working on, right? Trying to make the world's first, universal AAV gene therapy that could be used to treat more than one thing, and the first AAV in oncology in humans. And kind of came out from that, raised our Series A in 2024. That was $20 million. And that was like, we had to hustle for that, right? 2024 was very similar to 2025 in that like, kids were depressed, to put it lightly. We dragged that thing across the finish line, kicking and screaming. And 2025 for us was not intended to be a fundraising year. We had plenty, like we still do, plenty of money in the bank. But a really interesting opportunity presented itself. You mentioned, I sit on a lot of scientific advisory boards for both big and small companies, publics, privates, 2,000 person companies, and 2-person companies, and everything in between. I
Yeah.
also advise a lot of rare disease families, a lot of which, came from my time from being a professor. And you get a lot of families and folks reaching out being like, hey, my kiddo just got diagnosed with rare disease X, fill in the blank, stuff, all over the map. And,
Yeah.
for a lot of these kids, cell and gene therapy is probably the only option they have, particularly if it is for a disorder where they are literally missing a gene. Like there is nothing I can
Right.
give you. There's no small molecule I can give you. There's no antibody I can give you that can bind to a thing that doesn't exist. I
Right.
need to give you a copy of the gene you are missing. Right. And so that's where, gene therapies in particular really shine. And so I advise a lot of these families. And so I had kind of in my head already, like all of these companies and all of their needs, all of these families that I advise and all of their needs. And then we actually had an investor on our cap table who had come in, I believe it was during the SAFE. It was actually Imada Kuhn, the CEO of Mercury Bank here in
Okay.
Valley. I had sent out one of my quarterly update like investor newsletters, and he was like, hey, have you thought about doing a community round? And I was like, what is a community round? I've never heard of this in my life. And he's like, a community round where you accept kind of like angel checks, but from non-accredited investors. And I was like, no, 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 we're private. We can't accept money, the way that a public company can. We're a private company. We can't accept non-accredited funds. He's like, yeah, you can. And I was like, no, you can't. And we were like talking past each other. I'm like, no, 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 we're private. You can't do that. I think that's like illegal. And he's like, no, 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 the SEC changed the rules. You can raise up to $5 million every 12 months from non-accredited investors as a private company in the United States. And I was just like, what? And had to like look into this and figure it out and call counsel and be like who's smoking what here? Like, is that real? Can you really do this? And they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's just never really done in bio and certainly not done in therapeutics. It's perfectly legal. It happens in tech all the time. And yeah, you can raise up to $5 million every 12 months from non-accredited investors. And for folks who don't know, non-accredited means you don't make the amount of money to be considered an accredited investor, which is more than $200,000 a year, basically like base income, and or having at least $1 million in liquid assets. So the vast majority of people on
Right.
Earth do not qualify.
You have to go through the accreditation as
Yeah,
well,
and
right?
it's a
Like,
whole
yeah,
process.
like there's a whole
Um,
like time,
It's
there's
it's a
time
whole
and
bag.
yes. Yeah.
So the vast majority of people on Earth do not qualify to be an accredited investor and participate in a normal private financing as an angel. But through this unique instrument and this unique opportunity that the SEC rules changed in 2021 when we were all busy, thinking about COVID, they changed this
Yeah.
rule. It didn't really kind of get picked up by bio. So I looked into it, talked to counsel, and they're like, yeah, it's totally legal. It's just not really ever done. And they hated it with the fire of a thousand suns. They're just like, we hate this, don't do it. It's not normal in bio. It's gonna be weird. Talked to like our existing shareholders, and they kind of had a similar sentiment. They were like, it's not really done in bio. I don't like it. People are gonna think you're desperate. And like, also, why are you doing this? You have plenty of money in the bank. Yeah, like we just gave you $20 million. Like you're rolling in
Yeah.
money. Why would you do this? People are going to think something's wrong, something's up. And the brat in me was just kind of like, look, let me cook. Like I feel like this is a cool thing for something like a cell and gene therapy space,
Yeah.
right? Where it takes a lot of money, it's expensive to do. You have this very, very, very motivated community. I don't want to say fan base or like user base because that like not we're not this is not tech, but like you have this
Right.
community of people who's very, very passionate about the technology that you're working on from like the patient perspective. And so I was really interested in kind of thinking like, well, I wonder when we're even though we're working in oncology, we're still working in the rare disease space. So we're going after rare cancers. So like we're in the rare disease space still as well. And so it's like, I'm very interested, like from both like the rare, like the oncology cancer patient perspective and like the rare disease perspective, like would normal people who are patients, like would they be interested in investing in Siren? Because it's an actual investment. Like you are getting
Right.
preferred shares. This is not,
Okay, that was my question. Like, how does
yeah,
it, what are
it's not
they? Are they just like another angel?
literally your shares are indistinguishable from founders funds, uh,
Okay.
founder fund. Like they are preferred shares. It's better than I have. I have common. Like, this is not a philanthropic donation to like
Okay.
a nonprofit organization like ASGCT or the American Cancer Society or whoever.
Yeah.
It is not a philanthropic donation. It's not a Kickstarter where you're just like, I'm going to give you money because I want your thing to exist in the world, but I don't necessarily get anything in return.
Right.
It is an investment. You are getting preferred shares in the company. You just happen to be a non-accredited investor coming in on what's called a community round. And so I was like, well, I want to run this experiment because the experimentalist in me is just foaming at the mouth to see like, could this work?
Yeah.
Good. Like now I could advise all of the companies and families that I help, like, hey, this could be another tool in your quiver of like things that you could do to bring in funds to bring your cell and gene therapy to the clinic to see if this thing like really has legs. And so I was interested not only from helping Siren, but also like all of these other lenses through which I kind of see and help the world. And so I asked the board, got them to buy in. There's like, all right, all right, all right, we'll let you do this. I expected like maybe I would bring in a couple $100,000, but I would learn like the ins and outs of how to set it
Sure.
up and how it could work. And then I could advise other groups on how to set it up and kind of what my feedback would be on like, do this, but don't do that. And then unbeknownst to me, we raised just under like $4.5 million in just a few months. And it just absolutely blew me away that
Yeah.
the kind of buy-in and the kind of momentum and the kind of motivation that patients, particularly like many of these rare disease cancer patients, the amount of support that they had for you, right? Because it's still biotech timelines, right?
Sure.
It's still like we got to run, phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3 trials, right? So it's not
Yeah.
like your time to liquidity is not the same as like some hypey, AI startup that's like you might be able to return the fund in 6 months, like TBD. It's still biotech timelines, and I just didn't know would that resonate with folks, and that was the CEO in me thinking, and not the patient in me thinking, and realizing like these folks are motivated by something very different, and it comes
Right.
from like the inside of you. They are motivated by wanting drugs to get to the clinic so that they can sign up for them. They want to do things in tribute for people that they have lost, these types of things, and they are motivated by just very, very, very different things. And so that was very humbling and eye-opening to kind of see what was possible. And I think this should become a normal and regular way that people either raise money on its own or as part of a larger round, right? There's no reason why if you were going to run, a $30 million series, whatever next year, series A, B, C, save
Yeah.
5 million of that for your community, for your patients, for the people who want to take, your drug, whatever it is for in the cell and gene therapy space, you know, save an allocation the way that we normally talk about like a friends and family allocation, save a
Yeah.
community allocation, and allow them to come in and have their voice be heard early on. Because I mean, it's preferred shares, so like they have a voice.
Yeah.
Allow them to have a voice in, what are the programs you're advancing and when and how and what are the endpoints going to be and like all of those things. The way that a preferred shareholder gets to have that kind of a say. And so
Yeah.
I think I destigmatized it for everybody else. I know that I
Yes.
did because even the people, even my own shareholders who were like, ooh, I don't know, I'm nervous. Sure, go ahead and try it, but I hate it. Within a month, like we had raised $1 million. And
Right.
they all started calling me and being like, hey, would you be willing to talk to some other founders in my portfolio about what you're doing? I'd love for them to try this too. Because like that's all it took. It took an N of
Right.
one to show that like this can work and it's not stigmatized and it is
Right.
a perfectly valid way to raise funds from a very motivated group that wants you to succeed and that like you want these people like cheering for you for the rafters. And that's all it took was an N of one. And now like the stigma is completely gone. I've been hosting like webinars and podcasts and things about this
Yes.
the last several months, and just the stigma is gone. Like I have other people are telling me that they are like watching my webinars and things that I've put out on this in their board meetings, and their board is like, okay, yeah, totally, for sure, yeah, this looks great. And like that's all it took was an N of one.
I also was one of those people. So I listened to your webinar when you when you held it, and it was amazing. So I highly recommend. I think you have the link on your LinkedIn
Oh,
somewhere.
it's
So
everywhere, yeah.
definitely it's everywhere. Find it.
On our website,
Definitely
it's on my
listen to
Twitter,
it.
it's on our
Yeah.
LinkedIn, it's everywhere. You just Google it, you'll find it. It'll be the first thing that pops up.
So let's talk maybe just quickly structurally about the sort of preferred share. So what and sort of what are the implications of that? So you're gonna have you have a board. You're having board meetings, once a quarter. Yada yada yada. Here's the progress. Yada yada. What sort of visibility do the preferred shareholders get to the progress that you're making? Is it like a once a year meeting where you
Yeah.
are incorporating it? Tell us a little bit about that.
So that's entirely up to you. So you structure that however you want, right? So they're not
Okay.
on your board, right? Your board is
Right.
still just your
Exactly.
board.
Board's board.
But they have preferred shares. And so if you were to need to hold, which is not that often, but if you were to need to hold a shareholder vote as a private company,
Yep.
which there are times when that can happen, then they would have votes. And but for the most part, you're just going to keep them up to date the way that you keep everyone else on your cap table updated. So,
Yeah.
I've got accredited investors who put in $100,000 checks, $500,000 checks, $1 million checks, but they don't sit on our board.
Right.
They get our quarterly update kind of investor newsletter that goes through like all of the categories. We've got like corporate updates and business development updates and non-clinical and manufacturing and clinical and regulatory and IP and hiring and challenges and like next quarter's goals, right? So they would get that same quarterly update investor newsletter the way that all of our accredited kind of institutional VCs or corporate VCs
Yeah.
would as well. So they just kind of get into that pipeline of updates and feedback, and they're shareholders in Siren. So the hope would
That's
be that
amazing.
when it all works, and the hockey stick goes up and to the right, they get to benefit. They get to benefit not only by knowing about our drugs and when they're going to be in clinic and when they could start potentially signing up to receive them, but kind of all of the corporate updates as well and being along in the journey. And if you're a good CEO, and I highly recommend folks do this, you are not required to do this, but I highly recommend you do this. Like, when you put asks into your quarterly update investor newsletter that you should be sending out to all of your shareholders, whether they put $1 in or 20 million, when you do those asks, make sure some of those asks are asks that anyone could do, right? Some of our
Right.
asks are things that like only a founders fund of the world could answer. I'm like, hey,
Sure.
you get me a meeting with literally the FDA commissioner. I would love to chat with him about something. Like only a senior partner at
Right.
Founders Fund could get me that meeting.
Yeah.
But
Unless someone in your community round happens to be neighbors, right?
for sure, absolutely. But there are asks that you could ask
Yeah.
that anybody could potentially help with, where you're like, hey, we are trying to find where, ASGCT is hosting the annual meeting 2 years from now in this city. We would love to find a really interesting space to host. We're going to have a big happy hour there and invite all of not only our scientific community, but also our investor community. Does anyone have a really cool, interesting site that we could rent to
Yeah.
host that party? Have asks in that investor that give people an opportunity to help, because I promise you, people just want to help. I mean, the thing everyone needs most is money, but like outside of money, like there are many things people can do to like introduce you to, vendors and individual people that you might need, hires for key roles that you might have, or just like normal everyday asks like, hey, we need a venue to host this event. Does anyone have a cool whatever, a cool ballroom, a cool restaurant, a cool place that we could host an event in Georgia in 11 months? And so just like
Sure.
ask for asks that like people can help you with, and get that buy-in, and also engage with them as patients and as patient advocates and as like patient tributes, and have, regular listening sessions with them, not just as patients, but also as shareholders. But, you can
Yeah.
incorporate both of those lenses together, and just bring that voice into your decision making as early as you can. And it will never hurt you. It will always benefit you to know, no matter what your disease is that you're working on, whether it's a rare genetic disorder or it's a rare cancer, having patients and people who are advocating on behalf of patients and having that voice early on it will never hurt you. So just start engaging with that community, whether they're your investor or not, but particularly if they're your investor. um,
Right.
Start engaging with them early and do things, even if it's not required by the SEC or something, like
Right.
do it anyways because you're a good person. Um, and, and see where that can help take your company. Because I think the way we've always done things is clearly not the way we're going to be able to do things moving forward. And I mean
Right.
that through every possible lens through which you could make that statement, both in
And
terms of
you've,
like,
yeah, when we
yeah,
were prepping for this, like you made a statement that I'm just going to try and summarize here, because like it's very much in that thing. Basically, we can't keep doing this the way we have been in gene and cell therapy. We have to find a path. And I think what you said, you a little bit like Babe Ruth, you sort of pointed at the stands and said, we need to be able to move from discovery to approval in less than 5 years, less than 20 million, and you can't have a list price of 3 to 5 million per patient.
yeah.
But like all that has to come together and still give you a fundable company. So I'd love for you to talk about a little bit how you see Siren sort of trying to move down this path towards that aspiration.
Sure. Like I think the days like it used to be, and this was everywhere, not just Silicon Valley, but we do this very badly in Silicon Valley, right? The needle for measurement was always like, what's your head count? You're like, oh, I started
Yeah.
a company. Like, oh, how big are you? Right? Like, what's your
Yeah.
head count? How many FTEs do you have? And it was just like, this is not the question to be asking. Or how much have you raised? Also, not the question to be asking. It's also not what we should celebrate, right? It should not be like, oh, we just bought a new building and we hired 200 people and we raised $250 million. And I'm like, none of those are achievements.
Right.
None of those matter.
Right.
None of those are things that we should be celebrating. This is both like as a CEO, but also as like a community, and as a society, as a biotech journalism-esque lens. Like none of those are things to celebrate. Things to
Right.
celebrate are like getting an IND submitted and open, dosing a first patient,
Yeah.
completing the trial, publishing the results of those trial of that
Yes.
on clinicaltrials.gov,
Yep.
publishing those results in an open access journal article, and on things like bioarchive, so that everyone in the world can read that data.
And if
Get
I may,
approved,
publishing the 5 year follow-up of those patients
publishing
because
the 5-year
long-term data
follow-up,
matters.
getting that drug approved, getting that drug launched, getting actual people to take your drug after it has been launched. Like those are
Right.
things to celebrate that we should all
Right.
be cheering for. But it is not like I bought a building, I hired a bunch of people, and I raised money. Those are not things to celebrate. And I think particularly in this moment where we are in a fundraising trough at the moment. Like everything's cyclical. It's going to go, we'll get back to a hype cycle. We have every single cycle that has ever existed since the beginning of time. There'll be another hype cycle, and then we'll have another drought, another hype cycle, and another drought. We're in the middle of a funding drought at the moment, but the hype cycle is coming back. It will, it always does. But like right now in this trough, we are not only experiencing a fundraising trough at the moment, but this is simultaneously happening with two really key events, like the incorporation of AI into every single aspect of our lives. And at the same time, that China is actually probably, if they haven't already, they're about to basically take us over when it comes to not only basic, but applied and translational and clinical science,
Yep.
at least in the bio front. So I think and you're seeing this with acquisitions, right? You're seeing big pharma, US and Europe big pharma, not acquiring US companies that, got massively overvalued during the last hype cycle when it kind of ended in like 21, 22. They're
Right.
not acquiring whether they're public or private, the US cell and gene therapy companies, right? They are largely acquiring the Chinese ones because they can get them
Yeah.
for, $30 million. So you have to start to be competitive with that. So how can you, as a US-based cell and gene therapy company, or Europe for that matter, or anywhere else, but just not China, like how can you now be competitive with a Chinese cell and gene therapy company that is doing 0 to 1 from like discovery to, phase 1 trial data posting? How can you
Right.
do that in single digit years? And by single digit, I don't really mean 9. I mean more like 2, 3, 4 years. Um,
Right.
how can you do that in single digit years? And how can you do it for a whole lot less capital than we've been doing? Like gone are the days of
Yeah.
your seed is 50 million, your A is 100 million, your B is 250 million. Then you do your crossover and then you IPO. And, it's this long drawn out process, where you're raising, north of a billion, sometimes north of 2 billion. And, in some cases, you still barely have an IND submitted. Like, no, those days are gone. They've
Right.
like never again. It just will not happen. So how can you get an IND submitted and get to that first that phase 1 trial, which is really like the most important kind of inflection point to see if your concept has legs? How can you get through that phase 1 with your cell and gene therapy with, I would say, quite frankly, like 10, 20, $30 million max? It cannot be that you raise a $250 million round and you still haven't dosed a person yet. Like
Right.
those days are over. So to be competitive, yeah, I think it's very, very small head counts, right? Siren is going to the clinic in 1 quarter. We're submitting our IND in like, Christ, what is it, like 40 days or something? We're submitting our IND and we have 6 people and we're
Right.
fine. Like you can do it. You don't need to have every last role in-house, right?
Right.
You can get world-class experts who provide services, whether it's animal vivariums or CDMOs to make your cell and gene therapy or you name it. Like, go get the world's experts to come help you and keep your head count small, which allows you to keep your footprint small.
Yep.
Don't go buy a, gazillion-dollar 10-year lease for a huge building and brag that you have a head count of 220. That is nothing to brag about. That's shameful. It means you're a
Yeah.
bad CEO. Uh, it is. Like, I'm sorry, but it is.
Yeah.
If you've raised $3 billion from Jeff Bezos, then go nuts. But like, if you're a normal CEO at a normal company and a normal
Right.
with a normal everything, like you should be trying to raise as little as possible with the smallest head count as possible in the smallest footprint as possible, but moving like you have jet fuel poured on you. You should still be moving incredibly fast because you're laser focused on
Yeah.
finding a way to get your cell and gene therapy through a phase 1 as fast as possible. So yeah, I think it's got to be small teams, small footprints, small capital raises where you find
Yeah.
ways to be super, super efficient to get a phase 1 thing through so that, like your whole start to finish to getting to FDA approval can happen in a time frame that allows you to be competitive with China. And if the first thought you have when you hear that is that's impossible, then you probably shouldn't be that CEO. If your
Yeah.
first thought when you hear that is I've got a
Well,
crazy idea for a way I think you could do that, then like you might be the person to go start the next revolutionary cell and gene therapy company.
and I would say it's not just like I think what you've described as a very specific sort of, I don't know, use case is maybe not the right word, but it's a very specific sort of situation where you've got, first of all, the right person, so the CEO, the team that are willing to bend and flex and say,
Yeah.
you know, yes, I can do this, or no, we're going to have to call a consultant, or that have that ability to know what they know and what they don't know, and but also the idea, the concept has to be movable in that period of time and with that level of investment, right? So it can't be, necessarily something that's going to take 3 levels of log rhythmic
Yeah.
improvement over baseline. It has to be something that's discrete, still innovative, but is being deployed in a way that's creative and creates this opportunity for these the patients that you're trying to serve. It's really interesting. Yeah, but it
I
makes
would
sense.
I would say I would hold that two possibilities here. I think there are a possibility for two different types of companies. There's
Yes.
manageable, concrete, like good data. You have some cookie, some edge, something that
Yes.
makes you unique. That's the thing that you're really gonna push on, that's gonna allow you to go out and raise and move really, really fast to advance that program.
Yeah.
Like 100%. Yes, yes, yes. I think there's also a possibility for like the cell and gene therapy field to take some pretty big swings at bat.
Sure.
Doesn't mean you have to go raise $200 million to do it. It
Yes.
means you're going to have to hustle and be scrappy and really creative and do things that you and the world and the regulators and everyone, like, they're not used to, and it'll make people uncomfortable and you won't know how to do it and all those types of things. But like both of those are possible. Like
Yeah.
the big, like every Nobel Prize in history was always someone who like definitely was not trying to win a Nobel Prize, but
Right.
they, like uncovered this unique thing and really leveraged it in a really kind of big and interesting way. It was usually something in basic science, and it was a big swing at bat, and like no one agreed with it when they first tried to
Yep.
publish it. The story you always hear from every Nobel Prize winner is, "I couldn't get any journal to take it. Everyone
Right.
said it was ridiculous. Everyone said it was ludicrous. Everyone said it couldn't work or it was too big." Right? So there's room for both. Like the things that are so big they seem just like phantasmically unbelievable and not possible, but also like absolutely like maniacal focus, like I'm going to get this to a phase 1 clinical trial by doing exactly this, and like I have my
Yeah.
path and it's mapped out, to the day on like this is what we need to do, this is who we're going to do it with, and this is the path, this is how much it costs. I'm going to negotiate the prices down with every one of my vendors 80%, and like I can do it with this team, this like super crack team of like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people. Like you don't need double digits anymore. Like with a single
Right.
head count of really, really good people, where you only do things in-house that only you can do.
Right.
Like you are the inventor of that thing, and you are the only and best person on the planet to do it. You should do that in-house, and everything else, I think you should outsource to an expert.
Yep.
Whether that's an organoid study, whether it's a mouse study, whether it's a primate
Yep.
study, whether it's plasmid manufacturing, cell manufacturing, viral manufacturing, storage of stuff, cold shipping, whatever. Like let literal world leading experts handle that, and you do the thing
Yep.
that you are like sparkly best at.
And absolutely, and that resonates so strongly with me because one of the things I think, at least my generation of scientists, right, as we were, growing up, there were all these kits, and all of a sudden, bada bing, bada boom, I can do this new procedure because it's in a kit, and I can follow
Yeah.
instructions, okay. But there is something to be said about really conserving your focus, at least internally in your company, to the thing that you're absolute best at, and letting someone else who is the best at pulling that kit off the shelf
Yeah.
do that kit for you.
Well,
That's
that's also what
that's
investors want to hear. Like, one of
yes.
the big things that if you've never raised money before and you're contemplating, starting a cell and gene therapy company and going out and fundraising, I can promise you one of the questions they want to hear, whether or not you're prepared to answer it or not is up to you. But the thing that they want to hear is, why are you the person to do this? Like, why wouldn't I pay this other person
Right.
to do it? Why are you literally like so uniquely well suited to be the world's leading person at this? What
Right.
is like your, whether it's educational background or your life experience or like past jobs that you've had, or your own experience with this disease, whatever, you name it. Like why is your Venn diagram of all the things that make you you, why is the center of that Venn diagram only point to you and no other person on earth? Why are
Right.
you kind of the only person that would make sense for us to give money to go after this disease with this modality? Like, why would we be absolute fools to give money to anybody else? Explain to me why you are the one cracked person on earth who this has to be. Um, and if you can't answer that, and you're like, well, it could just be anybody. Like, we're just using off the shelf everything, and we're doing off the shelf
Right.
ideas, and we're just going after a new disease that we read about that we don't really care about, we're not that passionate about, then like, you know what? They probably shouldn't give you the money because that
Right.
doesn't sound like a 2026 fundable and investable idea. Um,
Yeah.
right? It's got to be that like there is this like kind of merger of all of these Venn diagrams of perfect things such that the center of it points to only you and it points to right now, right? Why is
Yes.
right now the time that we should give you money to go after this disease with this modality? And why should you
Yep.
be the person to lead it? And if you can't answer those two things, it's probably not the time.
Yep.
But if you
No,
can, then like now is the moment.
And I will say, I've experienced that sort of once in my career. Again, I wasn't an entrepreneur, but I was sort of right time, right place, and right background to be sort of holy crap, like the person playing this role should be me.
Yeah.
And I will say, find that, like,
Yeah.
for our industry, if that, I would love that to be the message of our conversation today, is like, what an amazing thing is to be able to find that, because I think you found that in your role at Siren. I've been lucky enough to find it once. Like, once you find it once, you want to chase it too, so that's because
Oh
you'll
yeah,
know
and
what
don't be
it feels
afraid of it.
like.
If you like, if you kind of get that feeling, there's like this weird, scary, like you think you might throw up because it's like, oh, this is
Yeah.
scary. Like, am I gonna quit? Like when I was in academia, and it was just like I had been building up to that, undergrad, PhD, postdoc, instructorship, faculty position. Like you were just like
Yeah.
building up, like your whole entire life was academia. It was leading to this moment. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're like, am I gonna quit? Start a company? So you might, when you find it, it might not feel warm and fuzzy. It might not be like, I've found my purpose. It might
Right.
feel like you're gonna throw up.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
don't be afraid to throw up, is maybe the message. Like, it's okay. If you're gonna do something that really revolutionizes the
Yeah.
world, you're probably gonna feel pretty green, and it's gonna feel really scary. And it is truly gonna feel like you're jumping off a cliff without a parachute. And maybe your parachute is like a data set. Maybe your parachute is a co-founder. Maybe your parachute
Yeah.
is like a person that you have at home who believes in you, who you're fighting this fight for. Maybe that parachute is you got a little tiny grant that like just gave you enough hope that like, okay, maybe if I got this one data point, I'd be willing to do it, right? So you can apply for,
Yeah.
like Society for Gene and Cell Therapy has the career development grants. They're $100,000 now. When I won the first one, it was 25K. Now they're 100 grand. Like that's enough to get
Yeah.
a data set that might matter. So
Is,
like,
yeah, investable data set.
like,
Yeah.
so your parachute might not be a parachute, it might be some other thing, but like
Yep.
don't be afraid if when you find the thing that feels like it could be the thing that you might need to go do, whether it's in academia or government or policy or industry. Like it doesn't have to be a startup or academia. Like it could be in a million different lenses in the world, but like whatever that thing is, you might know that you found it when you don't feel warm and fuzzy, but when you feel like you might want to throw up because it feels so scary,
Yes.
and new and different and crazy and exciting. Like, so yeah,
Yep.
it will take some getting used to, but don't be afraid
So,
to jump.
so I hate to say it, but we are at the end of our time. We didn't get to talk as much about, the current media landscape as I would have wanted to, but I do get to ask you my favorite last question. So if you
Okay.
want to tie your messaging into that, all the better. So the last question that we always ask is, if you could wave a wand and fix one thing, for cell and gene therapy development, what would it be?
Yeah, maybe I tie it into the kind of perception. So one of the like I think biggest bummers for me of this trough that we have had has been how cell and gene therapy is portrayed in kind of like biotech news journalism, where it's only challenges and the wrong types of news, right? The things I was mentioning before, like fundraises, number of people hired, the size of the space you rented, or like some challenge that you face, like a complete response letter or something, or an SAE in a trial, or these types of things, or a CEO quitting or something. It's just like these are not news. These aren't
Right.
the things you should be celebrating. There are baby KJ-esque stories out there every single day, but they are not getting anywhere near the level of attention that that one did. But that it's kind of up to us. Like we could decide that we're just not going to click on those stories anymore. All the salacious ones meant to like bring you down. Like only click on the ones that are good. Don't give quotes to anyone who wants to write a story that's just like trash. So my hope for 2026 and beyond is just that we all start recognizing that like we are working in a space, right, the cell and gene therapy space that is literally the future of medicine, and we need to start acting like it. So like be pumped. Talk about your data in a way that is exciting. not only to like news media journalists and these types of things, but like in your papers, like get out on social media and talk to people about what you're doing, talk to people at conferences, talk to people at patient advocacy meetings, but like be pumped and be excited and like try to get the normal news media excited about what you're doing. It doesn't have to be just statin endpoints that you go talk to. Like it can be the New York Times, it can be the Wall Street Journal, it can be the Economist, it can be your local newspaper, it can be your
Yeah.
student newspaper. But like go find people where they are and tell them about all of the amazing things that you're working on because it's the coolest science on earth and everyone needs to know about it. We just need to start acting like we have the coolest science on earth because we do. Um, and just like shout it from the rooftops and drown out all the haters. And then when you accept your Nobel Prize one day, like please invite me and I want to like cheering for you in the audience and being like, yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's my wish.
Thank you so much for that. I wholeheartedly endorse. Niki Paulk, thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks for sharing your experience. And I'm very excited to watch what happens next for you and for Siren. So, good luck with the IND filing, and we'll hope to hear the great news in 2026.
I promise we'll be at ASGCT talking about it.
All right, all right. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks, you guys.